Welcome back to part two. We've just had a look at the race on Randwick. We've got a special guest who's just turned up. It's Richard Irvine from Fair Wagering Australia. I welcome all the guests. Richard, welcome to the show, mate.
Very nice.
Thanks for coming on, Rich. It's very kind of you.
Get all the grouse guests here on Racing Rant, as you know. Rich, what's been happening with Fair Wagering? How have you been?
I've been well.
Yep.
Fair Wagering is, it's good, just ticking along, and it's a good little platform, and there's some big issues going on at the moment that need some attention.
And at Fair Wagering, I know it's basically something that you've started independently of anybody, I suppose, trying to get the best deal, obviously for all punters, but for yourself.
Yeah.
And getting corporates to be like, play within some sort of boundaries. How's that going?
Oh, look, it's gone very, very well, and it's like I get quite a lot of praise for what's happened, but it's really been a massive.
Well, we actually got you on here so we could canonise you, Saint Richard Irvine. So to start at the beginning, what you obviously everyone was very angry, and you were particularly angry.
Yeah, and someone just needed to put their hand up and go, and I'd sort of hesitated for probably about a year, going, I don't want to get involved in all that, and then I was like, oh fuck it, it's just got to happen, and it was about time when sort of. I think when Ladbrokes and Bet365, when they all started, and they were just coming in saying this is how it's going to be. We're going to take over the industry. We're going to run it. And I was like, it's just too much. Like something's got to be said. And then I actually wrote to Sydney Morning Herald about it. And the letter I wrote, they wrote back and said, actually, that's really interesting. How would you be if we just published it in your name as an op-ed? And I was like, yeah, great. And that sort of got the ball rolling. And then I got a little bit of sort of media going on. I went on Today Tonight and just sort of got things going. And then how Fair Wagering was born really was like that kind of died down. I was like, well, there's still got a lot more to say, and where's this platform going to land, and what are we going to do? So I just thought that up and just put it together. And a few people have contributed to it as well. And yeah, it's good.
Are you looking at growing it? Do you need help? Is there punters out there? Because we have like a couple of thousand viewers, and there might be a retired solicitor, or do you need help, or is it?
I think well, not really, because I mean it's it's handy at the moment, and there'll be a time when it's not so handy. But what sort of moving further on from your question is, I do think what we do need to do is we somehow need to get a proper, recognised, registered voice for punters in the industry, and there's a few ways of doing that, and we can talk a bit about it today, and maybe some people watching and have better ideas of how we can get that done.
And what sort of person would that be?
Well, I think you're probably going to have an individual to do it. Obviously, I'd be in the market to do it, but I don't want to do it.
So once upon a time, I'll just break in there. Once upon a time, the voice of punters was, say, Clive Alcock, who would skulk around the members. He's a nice man. This is pre sort of corporate.
Yeah.
But back in the days when they thought,
this must have been like 80s or something, right?
90s, 90s, where they'd say, well, here's your punters member on the ATC board or the Racing New South Wales board or whatever.
Right.
And it was just a functionary. It was just someone, he's there. There you go, punters. Your man's there. That's all you get.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think they really want someone on there that's going to rattle the cage.
No, and I don't. Yeah. So I think that, and that's why it's kind of difficult. And I completely agree with you. Like, it's got to be.
It's got to be you.
Well, maybe. Or
But who's the second pick? I'm just trying to
Dan O'Sullivan. It's probably $1.70 me, $2.30 Dan O'Sullivan, then $101 a field, I guess. So.
Wouldn't Nathan Snow fit in there at the $7 range?
It's a bit too fiery, mate.
Yeah.
It's a bit too.
Well, okay. What is the key? Because you've dealt with administrators now over a long period of time.
Nathan would be great. I mean, anyone would be great. Nathan would be fantastic.
Stewie Davidson?
Stewie would be fantastic.
He's too nice.
There'd be a million people.
He'd be too nice.
Nah, he's all right. He's got a bit of mongrel in him when he needs it. So.
Actually, I saw some mongrel come out once at the card table when a bloke mentioned that he might have been cheating, and he absolutely fucking lost it. I was so proud of him. Fuck, I'd never seen that Stewie side. It was like dark Stewie. It was fucking
and
great.
He very occasionally, he'd blow up his staff very occasionally out on the rails.
Right, when the bag was short.
Very occasionally, yeah.
We're $3 out. Fuck! I remember that. Or when I...
But he's the world's nicest bloke.
He's a bit nice for it though, isn't he?
Maybe, yeah. Anyway,
but you're number one pick. You're it.
Yeah, look, and
would you do it?
So, moving further along, cutting to the chase. If there's any possibility of it happening, and it has to, we have to have some traction. We have to have a seat at the table. But the problem is there isn't really a table because everything is so fractioned. It's all over the shop. But one thing that I'm sort of interested in talking about today is the federal government are looking at things.
Well, why are they? So is that an initiative of yours? I mean...
No. Oh, yeah, a little. No, not... Well, I mean,
That was a bit each way. Yeah, no, yeah.
yeah. Well, when I think so, when the bookies wanted to get on offshore, they wanted to get in play in. So what they tried to do is basically say that offshore was a big problem, and they got Barry O'Farrell to do a study into the industry. And it didn't
Barry
go well.
O'Farrell as ARB chairman, or
No, that was before that. So he wasn't actually, because he wouldn't.
So he was New South Wales Premier at the time.
He'd got the arse from there and was doing nothing, and then got this post. And so basically he looked into the industry, and I'm pretty sure that that the bookies got it done, and because the guy who was in charge of the Australian Wagering Council way back was also maybe like the president of the Liberal Party or something, so maybe had a bit of pull there, and he got this sort of review of wagering, and the reason the bookies wanted it is because they wanted in-play to be allowed. But what actually happened was it didn't go in their favour, and Captain Pete, as you call him, and all those others got in and said, no in-play, we don't want that. And then they did look at the offshore wagering, but when they sort of opened things up to public submissions and said, let's look at offshore wagering, a huge amount of volume came across their desk of people saying, hang on, there's a big issue, everyone's getting their accounts closed, and it does lead to people betting offshore because you can't get a bet on in Australia. So the findings of the FAIR review said that one thing that they're going to do is sort of commission an independent study into account closures and restrictions. That's happening at the moment. The Department of Social Services have done it. I think it gets handed over to the government on June 30. The findings won't be made public, which is frustrating. And then whenever the government want to decide if they're going to do anything at all, that's when it will happen. On sort of overarching all of that, there is a national framework being put together for responsible gambling, advertising, taxation. I would assume the logical thing is in everybody's best interest, bookies included, that they bring together some sort of national regulator of online wagering, and that they're in charge of responsible gambling, taxation, advertising, and what I would like to see is a minimum bet limit.
But here's the problem, isn't it? That the states collect revenues from gambling.
I don't know if they do.
Well, Sean Byrne, who I presume would know,
Right.
he enunciated the fact that the reason that in-play will never happen in Australia is because the federal government get nothing out of it.
Right.
And they're the ones that need to change the laws.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So if there's nothing coming
But they do get something out of it via GST. Because the structure at the moment is, and I'm not a complete expert, but I think how it works is you pay your race field fees and then you pay GST to the government. And that leads us into this whole point of consumption tax that we can talk a bit about later. But I'm 99% sure that if we wanted to set up as bookies tomorrow, we pay our race field fees to the different bodies, and then we pay 10% on gross profit to the federal government. And that's why all the states are howling at the moment, because they're going, well, we're getting nothing out of this. That's why South Australia have unilaterally gone and done what they've done.
When they say they're getting nothing, you mean the government, the state government themselves, the racing regulator that the government has set up is getting the race fields money.
State by state,
Yeah.
yes.
But on a national level, isn't politics at the moment not in a good spot for gambling? Because your Xenophons and that have so much power at the moment, probably not much is going to happen on a national level. You've got to wait for another election, don't you?
No, I think it's a small enough issue that, I think when the decisions get made, Turnbull will just look at it and go, well, whoever's got the portfolio, if you say it's the right thing to do, that's what we're doing, and sign off on it.
Yeah, okay.
So, we give a shit about it, but the general public want to hear as little about, well, they don't know, and they want to hear as little about gambling as possible.
Well, I think they'd like to hear that the government's coming down on sort of corporate bookmaking or punting on a big with a big sledgehammer.
Yeah.
They'd
Why
like to hear
does
that.
it seem like all the bad press is about horse racing and very little of it, comparative to how much damage it does, is about poker machines?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, there's
Although the poker machine lobby is much more
So
powerful.
we need, yeah. So that's it. You want to be part of the lobby that means that we get a fair go.
I think he's saying he wants a lobby. He doesn't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
He wants to.
No, so what I'd like to see, but pokies are they've got nothing to do with us. They're their own beast. But I would like to see we have bring in a national regulator. That national regulator would have staff, and then they would have a board. There'd be a CEO of the national regulator, and then it would have a board, and the people on the board would be someone from the TAB, someone from the newly formed Australian Wagering Council. What's it called? It's got a good name.
You're the only man that will know it.
It's called like Fair Gambling Australia or something, or it might be called Responsible Gambling Australia.
Right,
It might
okay.
be called that. And then I would like to see a punter on there. just to see to the, and they meet once a month, they meet once every 2 months, and when, when big issues come up, instead of writing into you guys, they can write to whoever is the person on that board, and that person can make their own decisions about what should be put forward at the regular board meetings, and then
All right, so you need that framework. You need that to happen.
And without that, I don't know. Then so we have to wait and see what happens.
Okay, so how did you get happening what you did get happening, which is the minimum bet rule, for example?
Because so right when I was doing it, and then I wrote a letter to Peter V'landys, and he wrote back. This is really early on, and he wrote back in half an hour, a really long thing, basically just completely sort of condoning everything I'd said and said it's not right, And I kind of think that the whole New South Wales, the whole New South Wales minimum bet thing was already in the makings, and I just kind of popped up, and that's, people think that I made it happen. I didn't make it happen in New South Wales, it was already happening. Sure, the pressure that I and then everyone else who was behind me put on Victoria and then Queensland, that made a big difference because they didn't want to do it, But that's basically.
So Pete saw an opportunity to champion his participants.
Yep.
And that's how he sees it. And so fortunately fitted his worldview.
So, what's happening in Queensland at the moment? Because I'm getting knocked back.
Yeah. So look, they said it was going to come in at the start of July. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's going to come in, and it might be another couple of months.
Okay.
And then they're going to, they asked for submissions. Submissions got sent in. They said when they announced it that they will most likely mirror Victoria and New South Wales. And look, it should come in. I mean, yeah, we can hang out a bit longer.
It's
but
funny,
aren't
I
they
just
the
forget
organisation?
all the time because I'm not betting in Queensland all the time, so I'll just automatically bet to win 2,000 in Queensland, and it gets rejected. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And it's like, oh, it's Queensland.
Yeah.
It's
mad,
terrible.
isn't it? It's mad. But aren't they the state that reduced the on-course bookies' liabilities to 500?
So yeah, that was not a good sign when they did that. But they in Victoria, our argument was too strong, and in Queensland it was too strong. And they're I'm surprised, and I'm pushing in West Australia and South Australia, and they're doing the same thing. They're just sitting there with their sitting on their hands.
Why should they bother? Really?
Well, because I really do think that it is to the detriment of their industries if they don't.
But they actually accept that? I mean, does that get heard?
I think that you look at the results that's happening in. New South Wales and Victoria are clearly leading the pack. And you want as big a diverse market as possible. You want everyone participating, and that the sophisticated or the professional market is just as important. I don't have cold hard facts to say that a minimum bet limit is very, very beneficial to Victoria and New South Wales. But they keep coming out with announcements. Increased prize money, turnovers up. They just seem to be doing well. And
is there anyone validating or verifying that particular information?
Well, I haven't been able to find any. Occasionally Peter V'landys gets asked that, and he's kind of like, I don't really have anything. He doesn't sort of put forward any documents, but you could probably have a good look at Racing Victoria's financial statements, and you might be able to find some positive stuff there.
But
it's not having a negative
is
impact.
Turnover going up?
Definitely. In New South Wales and Victoria, absolutely.
Right. So
and there does seem to have been a bump in Victoria since the minimum bet limit came in. But, in Victoria doing a lot of good things. They have a very slick professional operation down there.
No, they do it well.
I probably think it's the best racing market in the world. New South Wales is pretty good. Hong Kong's pretty good, but Victoria's pretty outstanding.
Did you notice when Betfair went up, the commission went up last time? Did you notice any different in the figures, or
when it went up a couple of years back?
Yeah.
Well, I just think Betfair's become nowhere near as sharp as it used to be over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But it's still a good guide. It's great. Gives you great sort of feel for the market.
Well, the thing is, I think it's interesting, and that's why you should get out to the track, is a lot of the bookmakers are judging their prices on what Betfair is, and there's absolutely no liquidity. You know what I mean? So I think they're making mistakes. So it's it's a good angle for people to get out.
Bookies can get a horse to $8.50. That's $9 on the fair, but it's $9 on the fair. You can have $6 on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's an easy thing to move around and for operators to manipulate to get horses out that they want to bet.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's the greatest I think it's the greatest thing in racing, Betfair, and what's happened with Betfair with this, you know, I got a generated email during the week telling me this is what's happening, and that's it.
I reprinted it there, yeah.
Yeah, and we can talk about that a bit later. That's a shock to most of the industry.
Yeah, it's the two biggest issues like as big as the whole minimum bet limit is point of consumption tax, and yeah, the Betfair tax for the sophisticated gamblers, because the tipping point's coming. Like Betfair are going to have to brush New South Wales racing, you would think.
Why won't they? They won't.
Because
why don't they? Why do they just send us all a generated email saying, look, this is what's happening and we're going to cop it to you? Why wouldn't they pull their product down for 3 months and gamble that...
Well, maybe they're at that point now. I mean, this last one, because I spoke to a bloke from Betfair last week, I just contacted him and said, I just want to understand it better. And it was great. One of the blokes called me back and I had a good chat with him. He sent me a whole lot of stuff. And it sounded like, you know, he wasn't saying anything on the phone, but it sounded in his voice that they're like, he was basically saying like, this is the last straw. But, and you know, like...
But is it the last straw?
Well, who knows? I mean...
See, one thing about Mr. Volandis is he's made this decision, right? And like, if you look at all the people talking about it, they're all just hammering him. And he makes a lot of big decisions, whether they be right or whether we think they're wrong. I personally think this one's wrong, but that's just an opinion. But one thing about it, if Betfair were to drop their product on New South Wales racing for, say, 3 months, and then the turnover came in and it just went down everywhere because people aren't using both, he's not the sort of bloke that's, even though he makes big decisions and he might look stubborn and tough and hard, I'm tipping he's very flexible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm tipping he wants what's best for the industry.
Of course.
So I don't even blame him at all for making this decision, at all. I don't blame him. He's seen, I need to get some more money in, I'm going to do it this way.
Well,
now,
you institute the tax. What you do is you start reviewing how can we push this up.
And I think if it reviews and it's going no good for him, I think he's the first to say, look, fucking come back Betfair, it's been 3 months, I've made a mistake.
I don't know why you're giving him such a level of professionalism. There would be data out there about the one that happened 2 years ago. Does he have it?
I'm just dirty on Betfair.
Is he just not letting us know?
I'm dirty on Betfair.
A change
just like
when the Betfair
saying
went up
we're doing it this
2%
way
a couple of years ago. He's got a precedent there to analyse data and check what happened.
So maybe he's right.
But we want him to see what happens when there's no Betfair, not when the Betfair com rate goes up.
That's what I'm saying.
But
and the only way we're going to find no Betfair is if Betfair drop their product for 3 or 4 months. I love Betfair. It's my fucking favourite friend. And the thought of no racing New South Wales Betfair, it just terrifies me.
How bad is it when it's not on? You just sit there going, oh.
You just all look at each other. But I think that's what's going to happen. So we did it for 3 months and then turnover just goes south like we assume it will.
That's right. And
I'm saying
right?
He's made this big decision, but I'm also saying that whilst he makes big decisions, he's not the sort of bloke that wouldn't. He'd go back there if we were right. If we're wrong,
okay,
well,
but
then
I mean, you sent him the email about originally when you had your concerns, and he sent back within half an hour a detailed thing saying how he understands your point of view and thinks you had valid points.
Yep.
Well,
I've sent him a couple of letters just quickly.
You could write him today, and he would write.
He fucking responds within an hour.
Yeah.
But is it like a politician's response?
No, he just calls it. But I think.
Well, a politician's response will be 2 weeks later. He gets back to you in half an hour. Yeah. I've had the same experience. Half a fucking hour. I fucking wrote him once. He rang a minute later.
Yeah.
Like his finger on the thumb.
Yeah, like
that was an urgent phone call back then.
But he did. Like I'm just saying.
He's not elitist anyway. He's got the common touch. Like he looks at everyone the same way. And if you're a participant, whether you're a staffer or
I don't think there's any doubt he wants the best for the industry.
Well, he's had a mullet and gone to trot racing. He's got the common touch.
I did not think this would be PVL love fest, but it's turning into that.
No, I'm a dirty on Betfair love fest. I'm a hate festive that they just go, oh, that's what they're doing to us. Oh, all right, we'll just send an email to everybody. That's what they're doing to us. Instead of just going, well, hold on a minute. You're doing this to us. What are we going to do? It's like at school. Okay, let's say young Peter Volandis is the 8-year-old going around, yeah, look at you, and you're going, oh, I'll go change schools. I'll run away. I want Betfair to stand up and fucking swing one back.
But the problem, I think there's two main points that I see with Betfair. The first one is, and PVL makes a good point. Betfair have lobbed on him and said, hi, we want to bet with you. This is our business model. You need to make things work for us. And he's gone, well, no, we believe that paying on turnover is the way that we want. We're not interested in a gross profit model. And he's stuck firm with that. And, he's basically saying to Betfair, you guys change your business model. And I think he's probably in a strong position to do that. And that's not saying that his stance is the right one for racing in New South Wales because it might be the wrong one. And then going further than that, I think that the big problem that Betfair face is, like, I had a good look at it, and people might understand it better than me, but I don't even think like them having to pay 2% on turnover is that big a problem. Where the big problem for them is that every time someone has a bet with them on Betfair, they have to pay 2%. So if you and I are on the opposite sides of the transaction on Betfair and we're backing Black Caviar, and we have 10 different $1,000 bets anywhere between $2 and $2.50, and the net position comes out that you're minus 100 and I'm plus 200 or something like that, we're going to pay a pittance in commission.
One of us is going to pay 4% on $200 winnings.
That's right.
$8, and Betfair gets slugged with a $500 bill for turnover tax.
That's right. So that's where the main problem is. It also, and then you can also look at it, it's not great like when people are backing $1.01 shots. So if you have 10,000 on a $1.01 shot and it gets,
it wins, you win $100, pay Betfair $4, they pay turnover tax on 10,000. How can they possibly win?
But then it also works the other way. If you have 1,000 on a $101 shot in the Melbourne Cup and it wins, or not the Melbourne Cup because it wouldn't be relevant to New South Wales, but then you win 100,000, you've got to pay Betfair, say 5,000, but they've only got to pay Racing New South Wales $20. So it's not great for them, but it does balance out. But the big problem where it's completely untenable is when they have the repetitive trading that they have to do.
The arbitrages.
Yeah.
Which they've basically rung them all and told them not to bet.
Right, yeah.
And you know, so much of that is done at the sharp end of the market because that's where the liquidity is.
Sure.
So it's just not going to work for them.
And also it's where the horses win at. You know, horses win the $1.02, even though they get their reserves at 100 to 1, they don't 100 to 1 chance win once a quarter.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's.
But why can't they get the redefined? They're basically saying it's not turnover. And they're calling it turnover, but it's not turnover.
There is a precedence for this. It's the bookies turnover tax rebate thing we used to have in play. When you would lay 10,000 to 1,000, you'd bet back 7,000 to 700 with old mate, and you paid turnover tax on $300.
Yeah.
So there is a I don't know if they still have that anymore, do they?
Yeah. Well,
I think they
must.
I think they do. If you're a corporate, I mean,
so if you don't pay
that would
turnover,
be the irony of it. If I have $100 on a horse in the morning and a bookie backs it back on Betfair, he probably says to Racing New South Wales, I didn't hold any money.
Yeah.
So therefore, why isn't that the same rule?
Well, we'd have to find out. And I think what Racing New South Wales just need to decide is they need to decide if they want an exchange. And if they don't want it, okay, well, let's all move on. But if they do want an exchange, they need to.
Well, having 3 months off is the way they find out if they want an exchange.
If they don't want it, it's just going to move offshore. It's going to go to Citybet and stuff like that.
Yeah, so. I think so. I think that, you know, the bloke from Betfair said that to me. And my initial reaction is whenever people say, oh, it'll make people bet offshore, I think it's an easy sort of comeback to like something that they don't want. But I do think that everyone's watching Betfair because they want to know, they want a tip or they want to know when their horse is going to go off. Yeah. And if we can't get that anymore by watching Betfair and New South Wales racing, there's a pretty good chance we're all going to move and start looking for that edge on Citybet. So there's that could happen. Yeah.
And the third wheel in this like amazingly intricate argument, I hope you're all keeping up with it because it even gets my head spinning, is that if we're down tools with Betfair for 3 months and then Racing New South Wales goes, my God, we do need an exchange to prop up all this corporate, all this tote betting, all these parimutuels, blah, 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 blah. Why can't, it's matching bets. I mean, a year 10 dropout could work out a program to run Betfair. Why can't we get Racing New South Wales to run an exchange?
Sure.
Or a racing body to say, look, we're going to run an exchange, take out 3.5 cents, and we get to keep the 3.5 cents.
I'd like to see them start a Citybet. I reckon the Tab should start a Citybet in Australia, and I think that could have an impact on reinvigorating the tote, and I think that they'd, you know...
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. No chance of happening, but...
No. Interesting times, interesting few months. There's a good chance that I'm going to get a postal worker's job for 3 months and just hope everything turns everything off, and I'll just
you'd ride the thing.
Oh, you get 6,000 a week as a postie, and I'll have 400,000 in my super. I'll be sweet.
You got to every job in the world pays at least 200,000 a year.
I'm telling you, they do.
So, Richie, let's talk about the consumption tax that's due to come in South Australia. Is that right?
July 1, yeah.
And what's the story with it?
Pretty simply, so completely ill-conceived. Let's use Sportsbet as the example of what's going to happen, and they've been the ones that have been fighting so hard against it. Sportsbet, if they're betting on South Australian racing, will pay racefield fees to South Australia, which I'm not completely sure what they are.
Yep.
Then they'll pay the government 10% GST, and then when that's all said and done, then the South Australian government say, okay, we're going to take 15% of your net profit, which is sort of triple dipping really. And yeah, I mean, the other states, it's going to come in the other states, but it hasn't come in, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't come in because the other states recognise that the bookies are paying GST at the moment, and you can't whack the bookies up 3 times. You can whack them up twice. You know, the government get that little bit of a share, and the industry gets that little bit of a share.
So the federal government need to help out here, or like they basically need to reassure the states that they are getting money via the GST eventually. Yeah,
well, I saw an article maybe in the Age or something like that that said that what might happen is the federal government will push all GST revenue to the states, and then there might be a small levy placed on bookies, which would then go towards paying for maybe a national regulator, which would be great, and we're done. And that's the point of consumption tax. Or if that would be a good result, or the federal government said, we're abolishing GST on turnover, but the states will be bringing in a 15% point of consumption tax. That'd be probably okay as well.
Right. So, but I can't imagine it's too sticky for, say, the SA government, because I'm sure the public perception is that gambling's in there with cigarettes and alcohol.
Sure.
And poker machine tax or whatever. So, like.
Yeah, and there's total misinformation put out by the South Australian government, reinforcing why they're doing it. I mean, they cite the fact, and so all the bookies paid basically no tax on a state level. They're all up in Northern Territory, and the most they can pay is maybe $500,000. So Sportsbet, they paid $500,000 in tax to the Northern Territory on like $330 million of revenue, which they then end up with about $80 million in profit or something like that. But part of that $330 million in revenue, they then paid $90 million in race field fees and GST. So they're paying the fair whack anyway. So what South Australian government's argument is that they pay basically a pittance up in Northern Territory. We deserve our share of it. And then they also use England as an example because there's a point of consumption tax in England. But bookies in England don't pay VAT, which is
GST.
Yeah. So they are.
So why can't they just say? Because I mean, South Australia are a bit dangerous because clearly the wagering offerers would just like say we're not going to bet on South Australia.
Well, they did more. They'll still bet on South Australia, but they won't bet people who are based in South Australia.
Right, yeah, South Australians.
Yes, yeah, and I think that. I mean, how hard is it to do a book? Like, you sit there making a book, and then you go, oh, hang on, this person, if he has 1,000 with me at $5, he's from South Australia, so I've got to tip out 15% of it to.
You got to bet him $4.80.
Yeah, well, that's what they say that they're gonna.
Oh right, so it's a bit like the William Hill. Remember when the?
Oh, that's what their comeback is.
What'll happen on July 1? Nothing will happen on July 1. All the bookies will suck it up, But if every single state brought it in, yeah, it'd be. You'd have to sit down and properly look at the mechanics of it because it is, GST is gross profit, and then I think this is net profit. So maybe, I don't even know if it's after they've paid all their wages and all that. You have to look into it a bit more carefully, but it doesn't sound much good. Like it's not going to.
It's an extra tax. It's, as you say, it's a triple dip.
Yeah, and we've made this great progress with minimum bet limits and.
So has everyone fallen into line? They're not about the states, about the wagering operators themselves. Because
are we talking about South Australian tax now?
No, we're talking about the minimum bet laws.
Yeah.
For example, when the minimum bet law came in, didn't William Hill then? Were they sporting bet at the time? Didn't they institute this scheme where people's odds changed?
Yeah, and they've given up on all that. And now they've got Centrebet, which is the market leader in fairness.
Okay, so it's
great.
all hunky.
Across the board, it's all going great. And I think that, I think the smaller bookies probably don't love it. It's kind of, it's had a bad impact. Like, if you're just trying to, if we were going to become bookies tomorrow, we'd be sitting there playing all the hard heads, and there's not much turnover out there. But I think, the big bookies like the Sportsbet and the Ladbrokes and the William Hills, I think they're probably going, it's not that big a deal, But it pushes them towards bookmaking the traditional way, and that's when you're as big as Sportsbet and the Tab and William Hill, you should be able to on a Saturday, bet 110% and hopefully hold 100,000. You take your 10,000, you move on to the next race.
What about the fact that we've got markets markets open for like 3 days before you can get a minimum bet.
Yeah, and that's never going to change. The bookies are always going to have that in their favour, and we just got to suck it up. And
All right, well, what about the centre bet situation where they let you on to lose 5, so you have 5 for 1 a horse, then they push it out to $7, and you're not allowed to back it anymore.
yeah. Well, I've heard a few people complain about that. I mean, yeah, let's call Tom and ask him, but he'll probably, they just. It doesn't make sense to the model that they've got. They've said we're going to bet everyone, and they just want turnover. So you're right. If they've bet you 5 for 1 and then they're out to $7, you'd think that they'd want more, but I don't know. Yeah. Well, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me. It's very frustrating.
What about bet pending? It takes too long.
Yeah. I mean,
to have a bet pending for a minute. That's
as long
Especially
as
if you're betting at the 3-minute mark.
okay.
Yeah, as long as they bet you. Yeah, look, it's probably too long. Yeah, a minute is a bloody long time. Yeah. I would find that very frustrating because the worst thing is and often it can time out. The tab do it as well. It just times out. Like it's not that they didn't bet you. It's just that one of their traders didn't get there in time to have a look at it. Yeah. So that is frustrating. And I think you just probably got to call the bookie.
But you can't. This is like.
Well, how bad is it when you want to complain and you're filthy at the tab and you get like, old mate in the call room and you're like, I want to make a complaint about fixed odds, and then he goes, yeah, hold on, and then you get put on to his supervisor who's got dead set no idea about fixed odds. Yeah. You're a million to one to ever get through to the trading room, who you want to talk to somebody you can actually have a conversation about. So that's very frustrating. But
unless you know half the blokes in the trading room, and then you just ring them personally and
just
say, listen, you're a fuckwits in there, and then they just go, oh, yes.
Oh, hey, Glenn, there you go.
What's it like on course day? Is it inside no good? Oh, fuck off, I'm not trying anything. It's quite funny, but we're only, it must be frustrating if you just don't have that little start. What a frustrating great game it still is, Rich.
The great game.
Well, one thing, when you want to get this board or be a part of this board or somebody to be a part of this board, what are some of the first things on your agenda to change?
Well, the very first one would be get the minimum bet limit nationwide. And not only that, sport's a big thing, and a lot of people contact me saying, what can we do about sport? So that, I think it's probably evens that the federal government bring in a minimum bet limit on sport.
For me, it's massive.
Right.
I would absolutely love that. So it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
To think that there's probably more liquidity on the sporting match I'm betting on, and they'll let me have $20 on the bloody thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? At even money. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. So,
and the sport, I think it'd be great for sports betting. The sporting codes, it'd be good for them. Sport is so much more about trading, and I know it's a bit of a clusterfuck at the moment because there's no in play, but I think the sporting codes would do well with a minimum bet law because you get so much more money. So
that'll be gold.
But what will happen with the federal government, and what happened with Queensland and Victoria is they underestimate us and they come back with a whole lot of rhetoric, and you look at it and go, that's all bullshit, and you see through it straight away. So even if the federal government are lazy and come back to us basically saying they're businesses, they can do what they want, well, that's okay. We'll take it and we'll look into it, and then we'll come back at them hard and we'll try and get media attention, and we'll just keep fucking pumping away at them.
Right. So you've still got an appetite for it. It hasn't worn you down at all.
No. Yeah. Well, it's just.
I would love to see the Channel 2 expose supporting gamblers. Wouldn't that be magnificent?
Yeah, I tried them. I tried 7:30 Report and I tried Four Corners, and not really interested. I got on Radio National, but that was...
Oh, awesome. Who with?
Fran.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm a big fan.
No, I went into the studio, and that was a more challenging interview. So, yeah.
So what, Fran had some curly questions for you?
Yeah. Couple at the end, I was like, can we pull that out?
When
she was like, no, we don't do that. And she opened the door, and I was just outside. I was like, okay.
So, what could she ask you that was...
I can't even remember. At the time,
When I talk to people out of racing, and you go, something comes up about corporate betting. You say, well, not everyone gets bet. And they go, well, what do you mean? When you go, well, they'll bet them, but they don't bet everybody, or, small, whatever. people who aren't in wagering are astonished.
Yeah, they just say it's a
Yes.
fucking scandal.
They go, that's outrageous. So I don't know why 7:30 Report or Four Corners wouldn't think that that was interesting to the whole population, even if they don't bet.
People who aren't punters, like 100% of them, just go, I can't even believe that can
I
happen.
can't believe that. What do you mean?
So,
Yeah,
so
they
the majority of the
actually
public
think,
are on our side.
they actually think that if something's $3.20 and you claim the tab, they should bet you 8.8 million to 4 million. Don't they just bet millions on that? No, sometimes $10. What? And they just go, and they have no. So I don't know why 7:30 or Four Corners wouldn't think that people would find that a great episode.
So, yeah.
There's not enough meat for Four Corners, and 7:30 just, I don't know.
It's a bit magazine style. But
Why don't we
where is
just
the
do, why don't we
ACCC in
just
all
do
this?
Australian story?
Yeah.
So you can be on Australian story
I like
and do it that way.
Australian
It's all right.
The ACCC, they were on the very first point of call, and they said that all they do is act upon government legislation. There is no government legislation in place that they can act on, so go away.
But it's clearly anti-competitive.
So I sort of said that to them too, and I said, well, hang on, when you haul Telstra in for doing something, they say, yeah, occasionally we can act outside the government's charter, but it has to be a massive issue affecting millions of people.
Okay, right. So
they're basically,
it's a sideshow, and so therefore we're not.
just, yeah.
Because I mean, they're the ones with the teeth.
Yep, absolutely, and that's, yeah. So, but until, so it's.
All right. So you get the framework up and running, and that's a starting point. That's somewhere you can take it.
Yeah.
Gee, it's been great insight into what you're doing, Richie, and punters out here I know are going to absolutely love this segment. This is going to be our most popular ever, and you've come across really well, and even I've understood nearly
Ben's
most
got
of
to
it.
take over Dan O'Sullivan. Though,
That's rough. I watched that episode. He had 1,800, right?
Yeah, he's the biggest hero of all time.
And
I was on the
what
next
is it
week, it was
normally?
900.
Right.
They brushed me.
Oh, no, I won't.
Anyway, so...
So have you had much to do with Dan? Because he's a
he's a lovely guy.
compelling voice, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very informative, very interesting guy. I know him a little bit. We flew down to Racing Victoria, and met with Bernard Saundry and Andrew Traits and a couple other guys when we were trying to get the minimum bet limit in. And I got a meeting organised. I said, well, I don't want to go alone. I need a bit of it. And so I just thought he'd be a good person. He came down with me, and he was really good. And so we spent the day together then, and occasionally we fly a few.
Andrew Twaits, is that the Betfair bloke?
That's the guy we interviewed
originally?
on the Punter Show.
Yeah.
Right. So Andrew Twaits as Racing Victoria, is he different?
Well, he doesn't work there anymore, but no, he was. Yeah, he was.
Because he was very, very engaging and personable when we interviewed him about Betfair.
Yep. Yeah. No, he's very much a sort of a neo-market guy. Like, he's all about this, where the market's going, where it's, profit-based taxation and highly digitalised. And I'm sure he's had a big impact on the success Racing Victoria have had. I think he's not there anymore. I think he was, when Bernard Saundry left, he left as well. And at last I heard he was doing work with CrownBet.
Okay.
I'll tell you what he was doing. He was the sort of expert witness, maybe, for CrownBet in the Tab-Tats merger. Yeah, that's the last time.
He's not
All right, so
Chinese president,
that's obviously a segue. Where do you see this merger taking us in the?
Well,
So we're not going to ever see combined pools, are we?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like the technology's too hard. It sounds like the way that the tab distributes money back to the industry is too convoluted and mixed up for it all. But fuck all that. Let's get a national regulator in. And one of the first things that need to happen is we need to smooth out all this entangled mess that the tabs are in Australia. Get a national tote. Get some sort of good rebate system going. I mean, that's a whole other segment in itself. But I mean, it's going to die. Like, the tote's going to die.
But they want it to die, don't they?
Well,
aren't they trying to?
I think. And
I don't think so, mate.
No, but aren't the tabs trying to migrate their betting to the fixed odds?
Well, I don't know, because the tote is so much more profitable for everybody, and I think that's why Pete V'landys is holding on so
but they
tight.
have to pay. They have to pay the state government and the racing industry a certain amount of that, and they don't have to do that with the fixed odds betting.
Yeah, but the yield on fixed odds racing would be much less than what it is on
Tab's got the best shop front in town.
Yeah, what do they make? You're probably right. They make 12 or 14% on
No,
turnover,
you
don't
ask
they?
those tab guys what they've laid, and you'd just be astonished. They have got bets that you would never think anyone would ever write, ever.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. Look, they pull in, I think all the corporates do. They make 12 or 14% on turnover on fixed odds, which is pretty fat.
That's huge.
Huge. And then what is it? The tote pulls in 18%, but then you're right. They're probably left with 11 cents of it because 7 cents goes straight to
7 to the industry.
PVL. Yeah.
And then there's rebates to some people.
So maybe you're right. Maybe they are. They don't give a fuck, and they're. But it seems like I think part of the reason that People Andes has decided that they don't really give a shit about Betfair is because they've got that 99-year agreement with the tab, and he says, and he's right, like the industry is most prosperous when the tote's firing, but it's not. It's it's diminishing because it's such a lethargic, boring way to bet.
Yeah.
Like.
And the corporates have obviously.
I got fucking hammered again.
Well, the corporates have obviously aggressively pursued that market share as well. In fact, I reckon that the English corporates would have seen the fact that everyone in Australia bet on the pari-mutuel, going, Jesus, that's just waiting for us, isn't it?
Yeah. And they thought, I think the big thing they thought is, I think in-play's been, they've made unlimited out of in-play in Europe, and they saw that it wasn't here, and they were like, I think that's a big thing, and like Sportsbet have done well, but all the other, like Bet365, Ladbrokes, William Hill, it's really bad for them that in-play hasn't come in, and I think that. And
yet they're still making 14%. Is that what you're saying?
But their biggest problem is that they've got such huge overheads. Like their marketing spend. I mean, all they do is every cent they make, they pump back into marketing because they're so desperate.
All right, so that's their acquisition cost per client that we're talking about, and that's something like, is it $1,000 per client or something?
I had a mate who worked at the tab, and he said they budgeted $250 a client. But
that's tab.
Yeah,
that's a different beast. They've got
okay. Well,
they've got brand recognition
that's
everywhere.
That's a starting point for us. Yeah. So, yeah, but I mean, and what's going to happen with the online, because they keep the few writers who write in the Fin Review and they write in the Herald, they keep saying there's going to be consolidation happening, but it doesn't really seem to happen. So, are we going to, is Bet365 going to? Is one of them going to pull out of the Australian market?
Well, that's a $64 million question.
Yeah, because they're not making money. I mean, they're making. I think Ladbrokes made like $5 million last year. They make good money, but then they spend so much.
So they want to make super profits in order to stay, and the in-play is about getting super profits.
So now for them, it's just about market share, and hopefully something changes later on where it's going to be the cream. Yeah. And then, they're also like, you look at William Hill, I mean, they've spent so much money to get this far. I mean, they made a poor investment, no doubt, but they'll just keep trucking away because they may as well, try and get 20 million back a year of what they spent as opposed to nothing, Anyway.
On that note, I think it's been one of our most interesting segments, punters, and Richie can, I don't know, contact.
Do you want anybody, the viewers, to do anything? Do you want emails?
Well, I reckon
stories?
Why don't I come back on in a couple of months' time? Because there's nothing really to do now until the federal government come back to us. And as soon as they come back and tell us what's going on, I'll come back on the show.
What a great idea!
And we'll have a good chat.
And in the meantime,
thanks so much for coming today, Richard.
Meantime, they can find you on Twitter.
Yep, I'm on Twitter.
You've got a website, Fair Wagering Australia.
Yep, and I throw stuff up there every now and then.
So it's like a blog.
Yeah, and go and have a read. There's some interesting stuff there. If some people might find it incredibly boring, but some people might like it.
I'm sure people will like it.
Well,
Richard, is there anything you want off them, but can they help you out in any way by giving their stories of being?
Nah, because that's all. Everyone knows what's
so common.
Yeah. It's just more, just one big army. Let's just keep marching forward and let's sort of get our industry back. I mean, we've got it half back. Let's get it fully back and let's keep ripping in.
Good job, Richie. Thanks so much.
Richie. Cheers.
Right, that's the end of Racing Rant this week. Mark,
while
you're turning it off, I've got to say goodbye to the viewers. And I want to thank Richie so much for coming on board. We'll see you on Tuesday for the preview show for Wednesday. The boys will be done, and I'll be back next Friday with the tips for Saturday, and hopefully they're a bit better than last Friday's job on that disgusting Randwick track. All the best. Bye.
See ya.